Okay, so we're going to continue Tzfat Israel with the Holy Shir HaShirim. So yesterday we left off with having learnt the first song, the first bit of poetry that we have here, where the female beloved is talking about the good old times she had, that she remembers, and she wants her man to return to her and bring back that delight and happiness she felt at that time. So there's a point that I haven't really clarified about the metaphors that we have here, and it's an interesting thing because we have a couple of layers of metaphor going on, because even the simple translation of the words are very metaphorical, talking about love in terms of oil and wine and all of these interesting fruits and terrain that we discuss to describe beauty and love. So that is obviously the symbolism and the metaphors used to describe love, which is something that can't really be described because it's an inner experience, it's a subjective feeling, and it's something that can't really be put into words. So in order to describe that, the poet or the songwriter goes into a mode of imagination and fantasy, and uses the beauty in nature, the beauty in things, and certain sounds and feelings, and trying to create associations in a person's psyche and mind. It's kind of evoking a certain, trying to create associations between different things that evoke the same feelings. Now this is true regarding human love, which is already the realm of human experience that is bordering upon the non-speakable. And here we have another layer of unspeakableness when we speak about the soul experience. Now the soul is an experience that is even more cloaked in unspeakableness, because we're not even really aware of what our soul is experiencing. We kind of we get like echoes of the experience of the soul, and we kind of feel a certain way vaguely, and obviously the more we get in touch with our soul, the more we get to know how we're feeling soul-wise. But the experience of Shir HaShirim is using terms of human attraction and love, which is already a concept pushing it to the edge of vocabulary, and then kind of further abstractizing it to talk about even experiences that we don't even know we're experiencing. Right? So we're talking about soul, that we don't really know the experience of that, to bring it to the love where we know the experience but we don't have the words for. So we have to constantly peel away these two very hard layers to get into, and ultimately there's different ways of doing it, and all the commentaries take something different out of it. And there's obviously also the simple translation to also understand the metaphors and really to understand really what is wanted from these metaphors. And also just to point out this idea that the Kabbalists, as we mentioned, use Shir HaShirim very strongly in creating the Kabbalistic vocabulary. The Kabbalistic vocabulary talking about unions and attraction and the world of the souls and behind the scenes, because really, like we said, Shir HaShirim is the furthest we have coming from a prophetic level of experience that actually goes to these places of describing the world of the soul. And so the non-Kabbalistic way of understanding it is that the soul, these experiences described here, have nothing to do with the soul. But it's the only way we can reference to it. The soul is experiencing something solely. These are human experiences, but the closest way we can enclose or have the ability to discuss these things, this is like the closest possible, but it's obviously not the same thing at all. That would be the regular understanding of a mashal, which is like a clothing of the way to grab something is put something that you can grab that somehow keeps the form of what's inside it, right? But it's more like, it's almost as if it's like a tent or a burqa, because you're not really seeing much of what's inside, but it's the best you can do. But the Kabbalistic version is actually, again, we're not going to go into exactly what these things mean, but the point of the Kabbalah is to actually say that they're not disconnected. In fact, these things are true on their most real level about the soul and about the spiritual world, because there is no disconnect between the physical world and the spiritual world. And that's actually what's unique about Shir HaShirim, in the sense that it insists, from the Kabbalistic point of view, that everything in the world, specifically feelings of love and beauty and attraction, are inherently godly. And the physical veneer that we experience is actually the only gateway we have into experiencing God Himself through these experiences. So it's not like the experience is physical and then the soul is something else, and then I'm just trying to like reference them together and see the similarities. They actually are the same thing in a deeper realm. And as we peel away the layers of how every human can peel the layers of how they relate to the world on a physical level, and therefore they will enter the state of prophecy, right? As when we learned Ramchal, we learned about this, how Kabbalah is really the remnants of prophecy. Now, prophecy is when the soul becomes awakened and starts experiencing the physical world through the lens of the soul, and doesn't see the physical world as a purely physical experience. It actually uses it as a gateway into the godly experience, because this is what we know about God. All we know about God is the physical world. All we know about connection is physical connection. But that actually can be a channel into going deeper. And as actually the Tzfat Israel says, why do we read Shir HaShirim in Pesach? Is because in Pesach the soul gets redeemed. And now the soul is able to help us look at the whole world and all the experience inside of it and not get stuck on the outside level. Right? What's known in the Kabbalistic language as the serpent skin. Adam when he was in Gan Eden, it says he had garments of light, right? Kotnot or with an aleph. And after the sin, he received garments of skin, which is coarse, which means that the perception of a person of a human being in his ideal state is to perceive spirituality, is to perceive union and godliness and everything that is not blocked by the serpent skin. And that's why in Pesach, which is Yetziat Mitzrayim, like the Tanya says, in the shortest parak in Tanya, chapter 47, Tanya says every day a person must remember Yetziat Mitzrayim, as we say in Shema. And what is Yetziat Mitzrayim? Says the Tanya, to exit the bondage of the serpent's skin and to be included in the Or Ein Sof, in the true reality that is beyond this limited realm that we find ourselves in naturally as a human. So that's why on Pesach we have Yetziat Mitzrayim, says Fasemes, now we're able to look at the physical world, to look at the parts of the physical world that might be the most distracting from God. Right? The romance described here, if taken wrongly, can be complete diversion from the purpose. Right? And as the rabbis already mentioned in the Gemara, that some people misuse Shir HaShirim, and I just saw actually Malbim, who was he wrote his commentary in Germany in the early period of the Enlightenment, and he bemoans the fact that the people are using Shir HaShirim in inappropriate settings, using it as so the Tanakh talks about attraction and romance and all these things. So that's why we said already from earlier, that Shlomo Melech was taking a risk by writing Shir HaShirim, and it's a high stakes game of going into this place of intimacy that can be misunderstood, but rather Shlomo Melech said, you know what, I'm going to do this, and it's Kodesh Kodeshim, like the Rabbi Akiva says, because this is actually our gateway into shedding the perception of the animal soul. And actually the Zohar says that when one reads Shir HaShirim, he's actually taking off the zohama, the filth of the nachash, of the serpent. So this is really the theme of Shir HaShirim, according to that's why the Sephardi community have a minhag to read it on every Friday, which is the avoda of taking off the weekday clothes, the perception of the physical world as the week demands us to be, and putting on new clothes of Shabbat, clothes of light. So that's a general introduction to this idea.
It's the most strange thing that to try to describe spiritual experience using the most physical expression.
Right.
It's the exact opposite of what you would expect.
But that's the thing. It's not really the most physical expression. It's the part that it's most physically attractive to a person. It's the Achilles heel, what's that word, of a human being. But really, the true experience of love in its pure form is the most spiritual experience of a human being that a human being can have.
So why do we not have spiritual words that express that? Why do we have to resort to physical mashals to express that spiritually?
So this is very interesting point that you bring up, because Malbim actually has a very beautiful explanation of the whole of Shir HaShirim, and he explains the mashal of Shir HaShirim being a simple girl that was married to a simple man, both of them shepherds, and they had a beautiful little romantic marriage going on. Then the king saw this woman and said, I want her for me. And he took her captive as a wife, or as a girl to have around. And she constantly wanted to escape the palace and go back to her pure love that she had. So he says that's the same what happens to every soul. A soul is, before it gets trapped into a body, has a whole different way of experiencing things, with a whole different vocabulary and perception of existence. But once it gets trapped into the body, it loses all of that. But then it gets hints of the fact that it used to know more, and it had a whole different reality. And that is actually what is causing her to, it kind of awakens inside of her the longing for the good old life that she knows she deserves. And Malbim actually says that Shlomo Melech in his lifetime had 5 prophetic visions. 4 actually, he had 4 prophetic visions, which is mentioned in the Book of Kings. And one of them was the dream. The first one is the dream he had where Hashem said, I've seen you trying to serve me and get to know me. So he offered him either wealth, power, or wisdom. And he chose wisdom. And that was a dream. But Malbim explains, if that was a dream, it was just a summary of his whole life until then that came to him in a prophetic dream, where kind of he broke through. All of that hard work paid off. And in that vision, Hashem was showing him, so your soul has now escaped the palace of this king that's keeping you captive. So this is really what's happening in Shir HaShirim, that the Shir HaShirim is trying to get us to remember who we really are, and Shlomo Melech himself and the songwriter here is constantly singing that song to its true love, that it doesn't even remember how to refer to, but there's hints of it coming through, and all we can use really is the mind we have. And that's what actually Malbim explains. The Beit HaMikdash was the one place where the soul where a human being went and was able to go back for a few moments to a soul experience. That's what it says, every Jew should come on the 3 festivals and be seen, see and be seen. There was like they would prostrate in the Beit HaMikdash and have this, ego death experience of going back into the state of soul oneness, and that's what we spoke about last time. That Beit HaMikdash is that place where there's the chasm is is kind of the bridge is narrowed. So really that's why, according to the rabbis, Shir HaShirim is a lot about the experience of being away from Beit HaMikdash, being away from also the giving of the Torah was then where Hashem says he opened heaven and earth and he showed the right heaven came down to us. These are the experiences where a soul is suddenly there's like a crack in the veneer of the soul of the physical existence. So I think we'll actually go straight to Malbim, and we'll follow on from here, how the Malbim explains the first 3 verses very beautifully. So the Malbim says, like we said before, the Malbim explains that we're talking about the soul that got hints of its true essence and its true connection to the Lord. And he says that there's 2 ways that a person can get to know God. He can get to know God through logic, through trying to prove or disprove the existence of a creator, etc., etc. But that is not actually going to get to God itself. Your mind's going to get to a certain clarity, but that's not the thing itself. It's about God. But there's a certain sense when a person gets to a clarity, to a place where his mind has shown him that God exists. That's called he's getting a smell of God. He's getting a whiff of this truth that he can't seem to actually see, and it's kind of locked into a bottle or in a room, but there's like a little whiff kind of escaping that existence. So basically, he says that the oil, the smelling, flowing oils, is the soul saying, I've gotten a whiff of you, and I know you exist, but I want to have an actual face-to-face experience. I want to actually feel you and know you on a real level. And that is when the soul says, Yishakeni, I want to be kissed by God, which is an actual experience of prophecy, which is where the mind loses the limitations. It loses the limitations of the physical. So the mind he's saying here, the soul has a mind, and it gets limited to the abilities of the physical mind, which uses the tools of logic, once it's brought down into a body. But the soul's mind is actually desiring to go back to actually experience God. And he says the words here, it's unbelievable tshuka and longing and he says this is actually what the Zohar explains, is when tzaddikim depart this world through mitat nashika, is the death through kissing. He says that Moshe, Aaron and Miriam passed away through that experience where the soul is actually given this complete experience with God, and that actually not possible for a human being while they're in the body. So he says, I want to experience you face to face and give me that experience. Ki tovim dodecha miyayin, because the experience of feeling godliness is better than wine. So he says, why is it better than wine? He says, wine also gives a person a happiness and it warms up a person's spirit. But he says this is considered a alien, foreign fire, because it's coming from downwards, upwards. We're intoxicating the body, and that actually also gives the soul some kind of openness and experience. But because it's coming from the body from the wrong direction, that's not what the soul is asking for. The soul is asking for the opposite way around. The soul is asking for my soul to experience God, and that will cause my body and human experience to feel that experience. And that's a simcha shel kedusha. So now he says, like we said before, why is the soul saying that I want this experience? L'reach shmanecha tovim, because I've received a whiff of you from somewhere distant, and I know you exist, and therefore I want to have more of it. So he says, Mashcheni acharecha, this is the next verse. Pull me after you, narutza, I will run. So he says a very interesting thing. He says, when a person is when the mind is enclosed in a body, the processes of thought are very slow. you grasp one thought, that follows on to a next thought, and the next day you're building on that, and the whole build-up of clarity of God's existence and spiritual awareness is built step by step, and it's also coupled with heaviness from the body, and there's basically this strong pull to gravitation towards the body that prevents the mind from fleeing towards godliness. And that's why the soul is asking for this face-to-face experience, which will just pull me in the direction of God. And therefore, I will be, because because the king, Shlomo, this big bad king, has stolen me. And now I want to come back to you, meaning basically the body has taken control of my mind, and now I'm not able to have the full godly experience. And he says, Meisharim ahivucha, because the love of God is direct, is for the sake of love on its own. He says anything, all the physical loves that the body is trying to make, the soul is saying, all the love that the body is trying to suggest I get into, or they're not. There's no attraction to them for their own sake. He says, if you want money, what's money going to get you? Money is going to get you either power. What's power for? So people should listen to you. But then what's that for? So they should feel good. But then what's that for? So that you should be able to eat and drink and then go to sleep and then wake up. So it's this like cycle of there's no actual purpose in all of these pursuits that the body is giving us. So that all this attraction that we feel towards things of the body, it's not straight. It's not heading in a true direction. However, love of God is for its own sake, and that is what the body is asking for. So that's the Malbim's explanation of the first 3 verses. There's an actually very interesting. There's a very interesting Gemara, and it's also brought down in the Midrash. That's actually very connected to the first verse in this song that says, "Yishakenim in shikot pihu, ki tovim dodecha miyayin." Your love is sweeter than wine. So the Midrash says on this that Hashem says to the Jewish people, the divrei sofrim, meaning the rabbinical additions to the Torah, are sweeter to me than the Torah itself. And this is a very interesting idea, that the Torah Sheba'al Peh, like our aspect, the part that we add to the Torah, is sweeter than the Torah itself. And this is a very central theme to Shir HaShirim, because it gives us a perspective on what really learning Torah is. Learning Torah is not like a sermon being given from high above that we are passive about. Torah is a two-way street where the human, the Jew, gets involved and has something to say. And that's the unique aspect of Divrei Sofrim, Torah Sheba'al Peh, where, like it says, when a person's learning Torah, Hashem is sitting across and joining. And the Gemara, we see all of Talmud, all of Gemara is a conversation. It's an ongoing, living conversation up until today. When we learn the Torah, we're actually actively participating in the Torah. And as we know, this is actually Noten HaTorah. Hashem gave us the Torah, which is specifically the oral Torah, which Hashem gave us to make chidushim, to add to it, and to be actively involved. Interestingly, though, the level to how much we're involved in the Torah didn't happen really at the beginning, because it says in the Gemara that if we wouldn't have sinned with the golden calf, rather we would have kept the first version of the Luchot, there wouldn't have been Torah Sheba'al Peh. All of the Torah would be the 5 books of Moses and Yehoshua, because Yehoshua would be the Torah Sheba'al Peh, and Yehoshua would be basically outlining the borders of Israel, That's why it would be needed, but there would be no further discussion and dialogue that we have today. And Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen talks about this throughout his Sfarim, about the beauty of the failure in the golden calf. The fact that we messed up actually now made it possible for us to be brought back, so to speak, on a more personal level. So the fact that we brought down the Torah lower, because the second tablets were given on a lower level, and therefore there's forgetfulness, and it basically was brought down into the human experience more than it would have been without. And that's why we have the ability now to be part of the Torah on a personal level. And now every Jew comes with their individual personality and suggests, this is how I feel about this. And then Rav says one thing, Shmuel says another, Abaye says, Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. We have individual human beings that have obviously elevated themselves enough that their opinion is a Torah opinion, but it's their opinion. It's based on their personality and their way of thinking. And that is unique to Shir HaShirim, because Shir HaShirim is the first time, like we mentioned, where we see the experience between God and the Jewish people as an equal, as a couple. And not only as a couple, right? So you can have, there's lots of different relationships. There's a father-son relationship, but that's mainly one giving to the other. Obviously there's love, but there's a clear top and bottom involved. There's a king and his people, a teacher and a student, and all of these things. There's a distinct separation in terms of who's giving, who's receiving, who's on top of the other. Whereas a couple are equal. Now, a couple are equal can also be on two levels, and as we'll see in Shir HaShirim, there's different words for the couple here. It could be a kala, a raya, ti, dodi, right? Because a couple can start off usually in the beginning. People get attracted to each other based on externalities of character or of accomplishment, and there's obviously layers of externality. But even if the externalities are real, you know, this person's a good person. Like they've got qualities. They're refined. They've got something to offer. They're interesting. All of these nice things is what initially brings people together. But then eventually in the relationship that breaks down, and they get into fight and they get into an argument, which kind of suddenly they're thinking, why did I even get married to this person? Especially because also people's more negative side comes out over time, and their parts that they haven't yet worked on, and that kind of brings the relationship into question. But then when the couple is able to overcome that and continue loving each other and building the love deeper despite all of these newly found defects, that shows the relationship is deeper than the things or the qualities. Now the relationship is actually about the people themselves, regardless of any reasons.
If we're equal, what are we giving Hashem?
Hashem made the reality be this way, that we're giving him.
What is it we're giving?
We're giving him Torah and Mitzvot, and that is the fundamental building block of reality. That reality only exists with Torah and Mitzvot. So Hashem wants the world to exist, and He made it the way that the reality doesn't exist without us being actively involved in it. So we are basically creating the world for Him. So, right? That's why it says Yom HaShishi, when the Torah was given on the 6th day of Sivan, where Hashem made a condition into all of creation, all of existence only can exist if the Jewish people are doing mitzvot. Which is interesting actually, because the Torah is actually considered, it's called Mimino Eish Dat. It says in Parashat V'zot HaBracha that the Torah was given from Hashem's right hand, but it was a fiery law. So there's a concept of the Torah being a combination of chesed, of the right hand, and of fire. And this is really the essence of Torah, because it says, we say in the davening as well, there's the Hodu Ladonai Kitov Kila Olam Chastos. There's 26 times Kila Olam Chastos. So what did the Gemara say? that there was 26 generations before the giving of the Torah, where Hashem sustained the world purely on chesed. And then when Hashem gave the Torah, now it's not purely chesed. Why? Because Hashem suddenly made it that we need to deserve it. So which one is more chesed? The gevura that was given at the Torah time, when the Torah was given, was that gevura? Yeah, because now we're up for we need to be showing up. But on the other hand, that's the real chesed. Because just to give someone that they feel stupid by just giving is not real chesed. So the real chesed is by giving gevura, and therefore now there's a completion of the chesed, that now we're actively involved in creation. So the giving of the Torah, Matan Torah, was this face-to-face coming where creation now was elevated to a state of an equal by needing to deserve creation. And all the more so this was revealed when we didn't live up to the expectations of the gevura of the Torah, but the relationship continued all the more so, and that's when we were given, that's when the human being, the Jew, the soul of a Jew was revealed to be unconditionally connected to the story of Hashem's world, and therefore given actually more opportunity to be involved in the story of Torah. And this is very, Hanan was actually just mentioned to me, the Shir, the Gra says, B'yom Chatunato, it says the day of Hashem's marriage with the Jewish people, right? So the Gemara says it's Matan Torah. The giving of the Torah was Hashem's marriage. But, interestingly enough, what does Rashi say there? Which Matan Torah? The giving of the second Luchot on Yom Kippur after he atoned after the golden calf. Right.
That contract was cancelled.
Right, but there was a marriage. That was also a marriage. We don't see the experience of Matan Torah. The big celebration. When did the party happen? The wedding party was on Shavuot, but the real relationship was solidified. The real marriage happened behind closed doors after the fight, when they renewed their vows and loved each other regardless. And that is the true relationship, and that is really the essence of Shir HaShirim, where all through this distance, the longing comes out, and the beauty of the unconditionalness of the Jewish people's connection to Hashem comes out. So B'ezrat Hashem.
It's inevitable that in relationships, that we have breakups.
Sure, because the breakups come from expectations. You know, there's a certain. I feel like, I don't know, but I'm not married for that long. But I think breakups in connection comes from where the initial preconception of what the relationship was going to be like breaks down, or what the person is, or what the expectations of each other are break down, and then we're like, okay, am I even interested if that's not what I thought was going to be is not here, and then we have to then rediscover whether our connection was based on those things or not.
You mean it's the breakups or the challenges are mechanism to prove that the love is unconditional?
Not only to prove, but to actually reconnect on that level, and also to prove. But it's not automatic. If the actual connection was only based on those things, then that would lead to a complete breakup. But when it is like that, or when the connection is you could say like a zivug min hashamayim, where the connection is beyond my choice, because it's essential. There's an essential connection. So really, breakups are the most healthy things for a marriage. You know, breakups are the time to really to give up on externalities and focus on a pnimiyut.
We should be able to extract the wisdom of the Shir HaShirim and apply it to marriage.
For sure, 100%. Yeah.
Are you going to go through? Are you going to give us examples of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of evident as we go through it. Yeah, B'ezrat Hashem. Marriage is there's lots of psychological and you know, personal basically all kinds of relationships are discussed here. The commentaries mainly take it to connection between a Jew and his creator, but obviously the face thing is marriage. So so we're getting ready to get married to Hashem during Shavuot, and
good time.
yeah, the experience of Sfirat Omer is, you know, going through the desert, going through the times of where the Jews messed up in the desert 10 times, and all these things, And it's really amazing thing to be able to take away from this, like to actually look at every downfall on a personal level with ourselves and with Hashem, and see that as actually an opportunity to grow from it. And Rabbi Nachman's works are full of that, and every type of avodas Hashem, and Baal Shem Tov, and all these people seeing distance as an opportunity for further closeness. So yeah, B'ezrat Hashem, we should be really close to Hashem.